Let's talk to Ryan Sabey, Deputy Political Editor at The Sun. Ryan, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
We are examining today the appearance by the Prime Minister in front of the Liaison Committee yesterday, where he made a number of rather odd claims, don't you think?
Yeah, I thought his comment about housing and making out that housing in this country was plentiful for asylum seekers who are looking to find housing. I just found that quite staggering. And when he was actually asked to come up with some examples of whereabouts in the country that there was this plentiful housing stock, he felt a bit flummoxed, actually, and couldn't actually come up with an answer. Now, I think this might come under the category of putting his foot in it, because whenever a politician, particularly a Prime Minister, says, "I'll write to you with the detail," normally means they can't quite find the actual detail in the locker in the back of their minds, so they'll actually come back. So I think he will hope that this one just sort of fades away, but it is a very, very odd comment.
It really is. And I was asking Geoffrey Clifton-Brown, who's on the committee, and he was there yesterday asking some questions to Keir Starmer as well, you know, whether they can compel him to answer them. And he said, well, we can't really do that. But he said Meg Hillier will probably be rattling his cage if you haven't heard from him in about a month. So I know that we don't always check back with these things, but I think you and I should agree that we should try and check back and remember to go to the Liaison Committee in a month's time and say, have you actually heard anything from the Prime Minister about where all his housing is?
Yeah, that's one of the good things about the Liaison Committee. It meets 3 times a year, and what they can do, they can then go back to the Prime Minister and actually ask him those questions. And of course, as journalists, we can ask Downing Street at the daily briefings they have with us, you know, to actually clarify those comments. And I'm sure myself and other colleagues will be doing the same today, because we just need to know what his train of thought was. Especially when the housing stock in this country is limited, and it seems like, you know, the government trying to build 1.5 million homes is very, very difficult to actually achieve. So what actually, you know, was behind his thought process in that?
That's the thing. But there is a sort of ongoing concern, I would say, from people in this country that believe that Keir Starmer is severely out of touch with the people, you know, because once again he criticised the demonstration in Epping, called it sort of, you know, far-right thuggery again. It was almost like a revisit to last summer and the riots. And then yesterday there was another weird moment where he was asked if he was going to be taking a holiday, and they were sort of hopeful that, you know, his holiday wouldn't be interrupted. And he appeared to make a joke, and I know that, you know, it's not because he was thinking about Southport, but he should have been thinking about Southport, and he was sort of laughing about the fact that his holiday was interrupted last year, and it wasn't a very good look.
Yeah, no, there's that moment right at the end of the Liaison Committee yesterday, where he was asked about, you know, hope you all have a good summer holiday, and he didn't really want to sort of commit himself to actually being able to go away, because he didn't actually go away on holiday last year. I think he was due to go away. We had the general election and the first 100 days of that Labour government that he had to preside over. And I think at some point he was going to try and get away, but because of the Southport riots and what happened, he didn't actually. So I think he just didn't want to tempt fate in that respect. Yeah. So, but yeah, as you say, a couple of comments there were sort of, you know, quite odd, particularly the one about the hotel, the housing.
Well, exactly right. But you wonder what's going on in the sort of collective mind of Downing Street, because, you know, any chance he gets, he reels off this list of things, which always starts with the breakfast clubs, you know, that the government have achieved, and things that he thinks they're doing well. Like yesterday, he put out a tweet about the football governance, right, last night. And, you know, you read through the comments afterwards, and it's not one person is saying it's a good thing. Not one person appears to want it. And everybody's just being really, really critical and saying you should be really concentrating on the illegal migrants, mate.
Yeah, I think if you look at the things that he does reel off, whether it's the increase in free school meals, the football regulator, whether you like it or not, these are kind of, they're big announcements. But I think what the public want to see is action on the big 2 or 3 issues that really, really affect them, or they seem to be affecting their communities, whether it's migration, the cost of living crisis, or the NHS. And I think, as brilliant as, you know, maybe some of those announcements are, what he needs to really fix is those big picture things. And unless he gets a grip on that, that's really going to define his time in Downing Street. So, you know, the number 10, and they will say that all those decisions, free school meals, feed into that, you know, the government getting better. But actually, let's look at the big picture. Let's look at the big issues, and he really needs to solve those.
But let's also look at the things that they're claiming. You know, yesterday he put out a tweet that said, "We're fixing Britain's broken water industry, tackling pollution and backing customers. No more neglect, no more excuses. We promise change, we're delivering it." When they originally put that tweet out, it was actually corrected by a community note, which said that pollution under Labour had got worse. And this morning, we wake up to a story in the Daily Telegraph where it says dozens of Britain's beaches have been blighted by sewage spills as school summer holidays begin. And this is just the beginning of the summer holidays, right? Swimmers have been urged to think carefully before entering the water at Galston-on-Sea in Great Yarmouth after heavy rain over the weekend set off storm overflows. And the beach is supposed to be the 23rd best in Europe, but it's among 139 coastal locations around the country where sewage has been released over the past 2 days since that announcement was made.
Yeah, this is the big issue about the difference between being in opposition, promising lots of things, going into a general election where you're fighting the Liberal Democrats who are very vocal on this issue, and then actually getting into government and trying to get stuff done. And it is really difficult. And they have set out their stall yesterday of how they're going to try and literally clean up the water system. And there was obviously the big review. But actually, it's tough trying to get these things. And even Steve Reed, the Environment Secretary, said yesterday that some of this may take the best part of 10 years to get done. So this is just not going to happen overnight. And when the public want results at the click of a fingers, it's going to be difficult because the actual expectation about what's happening with reality are just, you know, quite wide apart.
Well, they did say they were ready for government when they clearly weren't. They did say that they had everything fully costed, which they clearly hadn't. And they did say that they were prepared in every single department to get going on day one, which also wasn't true. Yeah,
no, I remember speaking to Sir Keir Starmer the night before the general election. We were on the campaign trail with him, travelling from Glasgow to Birmingham, and he told me and several other reporters that they were ready to hit the ground running. And I think the reality is that when they got in, they will claim, oh, there's lots of money, that this £22 billion black coal that, you know, disputable. But I think the point is that it was very difficult for them, you know, to match the reality of what they were trying to do when they were campaigning. So, and I think that what the last year has borne out, that it's tough. It's being in government and making those decisions, and the cogs of Whitehall, the cogs of the civil service just don't turn quickly.
No, but also they've run out of money. You know, the government borrowing in the UK, breaking news today, has risen in June to higher expected 20.7 billion, right? Which is 3 billion more than the forecast from the OBR, and also more than the same time last year. Debt interest payments are now soaring, and it's becoming a real critical economic problem.
Yeah, so the fact that we've got borrowing that has gone up, the biggest for June, apart from a pandemic, sort of sets in train issues that will be leading up until the budget, because you have those borrowing costs that are high, you've got inflation that is pretty sticky, you're going to have some downgrades probably to the UK economy from the independent watchdog as you lead into this into the budget in the autumn. And the fact is that Rachel Reed is probably going to have to find somewhere in the region of sort of 20 to 30 billion pound just to balance the books. So she's got to do some accounting that actually fills that. And where does she go? She has already said that the low-hanging fruit that she took last October has already gone. She's already gone for national insurance on employees. She only wants to go back to that so many times. Where else does she go to find those billions and billions of pounds? She says that there's not going to be sort of a wealth tax. Could there be several sort of increased wealth taxes in terms of, you know, is there going to be harsher sort of levies on, you know, capital gains tax, inheritance tax, etc.? Yeah. Let's just wait and see. But the void has to be filled.
Well, Angela Rayner wants a tax on tourists, according to the Daily Telegraph. Do you think that'll happen?
Yeah. Well, I think on that, I think this is part of the power struggle between Angela Rayner and the rest of government, particularly the Treasury. She wants more power to be devolved to cities and sort of councils across the country. Now, what will then happen is that the likes of Sadiq Khan could have the powers to increase taxes for tourists in London. Andy Burnham could do the same in Manchester.
Yeah.
The trouble is, by adding a surcharge to every time you check into a hotel, is that actually going to turn away a lot of tourists? So you may be raising a little, some money in tax, but the actual, the sort of the impact on the wider economy in those regions will be off the scale. And I think the trouble is, the hospitality industry and where people spend their money in and around those hotels, attractions, they're gonna feel the impact of that.
Well, people have pointed out to me since I said, I'm not necessarily against the hospitality tax or tourist tax for people staying in hotels in Britain. In other countries where it works well, they don't have the high levels of VAT that we have. So we have a 20% tariff on everybody staying in every hotel room in London or Manchester or Glasgow or Cardiff or Dublin or Belfast. However, they can charge, say, a 5% tax on tourists or a 10% tax on tourists because they don't have that 20 already. Because we have that 20, I think it would be really, really damaging. Yeah,
no, just look at the sums, and when people are, coming to this country, looking at, you look at how much hotels cost in this country compared to other countries, it does seem to be it does seem to be expensive. Then you add another possibly 2, 3, 4, 5% on top of that, and people start to think, well, should we go to London for our summer holiday, or should we go somewhere else in Europe, or should we just stay put?
Yeah.
So I think they're the big questions that have to be asked. But I think I think the Treasury will probably be fighting against this one just because of that the knock-on effects for the rest of the country and or the wider economy.
Sure. I'll finish up just by playing you another clip from yesterday's Liaison Committee meeting. This is the Prime Minister quizzed on his achievements.
Is there anything you would, what different approach you've taken now you've had to sat in the hot seat?
Well, I think we could engage Parliament more, I don't doubt that, but I do think it's important for us to remind people of what improvements we have done to the NHS, what we've done on free school meals, breakfast clubs, childcare, school uniforms, what we've done in terms of the investment we've put into road and rail.
So from that list of achievements, what's been your best moment in the last year as Prime Minister?
Oh, walking into Downing Street and taking up the job of governing, and I wouldn't swap a single day in government for years and years in opposition.
Well, as long as you're happy, Keir, that's all right then. Imagine if you could walk out again. That would be good, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Let's get a voice note from Ryan. Thank you very much indeed.